In episode 40, the story begins with the mutants planning to set a trap for the Thundercats. So meanwhile, Jackman hears the sound of the thunder tank that's coming their way. So he told Sly, the leader of the mutants, to get ready for an attack. So he did, and a nosediver that has a cannon attached. Though it is confirmed that Vultureman has told the mutants earlier to use the cannon in exact range. So back with the thunder tank, they had no idea the thunder cannon status that there's a trap up ahead. That was until when Lionel's sword had told him what happened. So Lionel looked through the sword's eye, and that's when he realizes that there's a nosediver that has a cannon attached. So in the Thunder Tank, we have Panther, Chitara, and Lionel. Now that they know that there's an ambush up ahead, they decided to take some action. But they're not the only ones because Sly, the leader of the mutants, is taking action too, and the nosediver, of course. So he fired a cannon at the tank. But there's a problem. The Thundranium shells didn't work. That's because, according to Jackman, what he told him in his case earlier, that he's firing too close. So, long story short, Jackman and the Mutants just told Slythe that they are sure that the Thundercats are finished this time because they said with the Thundranium shells they will be weak as kittens, or so that's what they thought. So back with the Thunder Tank, it has now been shot thanks to the cannon that Slythe used. It's now upside down. So the nosediver is about to get closer. So back with the Thunder Tank, Panther was the first one out of the tank, and so were Lionel and Chitara. Then Panther made a suspicious hunch that the mutants are using Thundranium shells. But then Lionel pleads his case to say he doesn't feel weak at all, and neither did Chitara. Then Panther had a thought that the cannon that they used are fired a bit too close. So back with Slythe and the nosediver, he continues to shoot at the Thundercats with the cannon, but the Thundercats dodged the attack. So Chitara went first to go face to face with a nosediver, and so did Panthro. He went second. So long story short, back with Slythe and the nosediver, he was losing all control, and if that's not bad enough, the cannon's out of commission. So then it's Lionel's turn. So what he did is that he uses his sword, just like what any good guy would do. It lifts up the nosediver, and it went upside down at the edge of the cliff. But when Sly found out that the nosediver was upside down and so was he was screaming, "Help! Help!" because he knows he's going to fall off the cliff, and so was the nosediver. So back with Lionel, Chitara, and Panther, when they saw that the nosediver was about to fall in along with Sly, what Lionel wanted to know from Panther, should we be doing this? Well, it is necessary, Panther said. So guess what the Thundercats did? Each Thundercat grabbed each end of the nosediver, and they began to pull back the best way they knew how. So as the Thundercats were doing that, that's when Jatara told Slythe, "Get out of there, quick!" And so Slythe did. So long story short, now that Slythe's out of the nosediver, he thanked the Thundercats, and by the use of his tail, he whacked Lionel in the back, which causes the Thundercats to drop the nosediver into the chasm, lost forever. The Thundercats, meanwhile, were hanging on for dear life until Lionel uses his claw shield to get everybody out himself, Panthro, and Chitara. So, back with Slythe, he escapes with Jackalman on the Skycutter, so they now headed back to Castle Plondar. So, meanwhile, there, in the castle's control room, that's when Vultureman got upset with Slythe for losing both the cannon and the nosediver all at once. So Slythe has his turn to plead his case to Vultureman to say that it's his technology that is faulty. Well, that response just made Vultureman upset. So in this result for this insult, that's when Vultureman told Slythe that since you and your friends don't like the machines and everything that I have ever built, well, let's see how well you all do without them. So what Vultureman did was unbelievable. He activated the self-destruct mechanism for all the weapons, vehicles, and of course the control room screen and everything else. So long story short, after Vultureman had activated the self-destruct mechanism, then left the room, that's when everything started to explode, just like what Vultureman said. First the screen in the control room, then all the vehicles and all the weapons. So after all that, that's when Jackalman went first to speak in his case to Slythe to say, "You shouldn't have said that. This is your fault." Then Monkey says, "Oh, that's just great. Now we're back down to our old-fashioned weapons again. Let's just face it, we don't have a chance against the Thundercats and their weapons." But then, aha, Sly says that he has a plan. We could convince Mumm-ra to take the Thundercats' weapons away. So Jackalman, after he heard it from Slythe, he says, "Mumm-ra, you've got to be kidding me." So Monkey make a suggestion with Slice, say, "Why don't you go on ahead and convince him? We'll just stay right here." So Slythe agrees with Monkey's idea. So he heads out to the Black Pyramid to see Mumm-ra in his tomb chamber, of course. So meanwhile, the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, and then long story short, after Mumm-ra did what he normally does, transform from his mummified form to his monstrous form, that's when Sly shows up. So Mumm-ra said to Sly, "So let me get this straight. You and your friends had lost all your weapons, so now you're going to need me to have the Thundercats lose their weapons. Am I right?" Then Sly has his turn to plead his case to say, "Unless you don't have enough power to do so." So that insult made Mumm-ra upset. "If you want power," Mumm-ra said, "then power you shall get." So that's what happened. So long story short, Mumm-ra had created something that Slythe has never seen before, the Volt creature. So what did Mumm-ra do? He sent it out on its mission to Cat's Lair, so that's what it did. So later at Cat's Lair, the Volt creature went inside the control room. It sorted out all of the telescreens and everything else. So when the Thundercats were the first to arrive, Chitara, Panthro, and Lino, they had never seen anything like it before. So bad news, according to Panthro, now that the control room power is out, Lino knows exactly where it's going, the sword chamber. So Chitara went to chase after it. So long story short, Chitara continues to pursue it until she finally arrives outside of the sword chamber. Lino and Panthro, however, had caught up with her, but now here comes the bad news. The door for the sword chamber is sealed shut, so we know what this means. That means that the Thundercats should have realized that it was all part of Mumm-ra's plan. So back with Lino, he knows what to do. He calls for his sword to come to him. So inside of the sword chamber, the Sword of Omens tries to do just that. But nothing happened. So back with the Thundercats outside of the sword chamber, since Plan A didn't work, so Chitara has suggested to Panthro to use Plan B to cut his way in. So he uses the welder to do that. But unfortunately, it was no use. So Panthro just let slip to say the reason why he built the doors in the first place is so that it could withstand anything. So in other words, the Thundercats now faced with the bad news. They are weaponless. So back at the tomb chamber of the Black Pyramid, that's when Mumm-ra told Slythe, "Go now, tell your friends that they have a chance to seize Cat's Lair. You may have this opportunity yet. You don't really need the technology. You do have the skills that you need," he said. So the next morning at Cat's Lair, the first Thundercat to be on a guard duty was Chitara. But she had no idea that she was about to be surrounded by the mutants, Jackalman and Munkian, and then later on Sly, the leader of the mutants, who later shows up. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, was the first to show up, and he just told Chitara that her time has come. "Why don't you slither back to your castle Plondar?" she said, as an insult to Slythe, of course. So Slythe asked her a question. "What's the matter? Did you lose your staff, Chitara?" So both Slythe and Chitara are one-on-one, but that was until both Jackalman and Munkin had captured her, so she was the first to go. So long story short, meanwhile in the Kessler's meeting room, that's when Lionel Panthro and Snarf were talking about how they're going to get Lionel's sword back. Well, Snarf says, well, the only thing that can get inside was air. So you know what this means. Aha! Panthro comes up with a plan. So he told Snarf that he can get inside a ventilation shaft to get to the sword chamber. That way he can get Lionel's sword out. So Panthro suggested that he should go get Chitara and then he'll meet up with Lionel and Snarf, but he had no idea that Chitara had already been captured by the mutants. So meanwhile, after he heads off, Panthro had arrived in the Thunder Tank's garage. That was until out of nowhere, Slythe and the mutants began to go after Panthro, and they attempted to capture him just like they did with Chitara. Oh, you're probably wondering what happened to Tiger and the kittens. Don't worry, they'll show up later. So anyway, back with Panthro, he's now being all chained up thanks to Jackalman and Monkey. So just like what the mutants did with Chitara, they took Panthro to Castle Plondor. So meanwhile, Castle Plondor is in the dungeon that both Monkey and the Jackalman are talking about capturing Lionel next. Meanwhile, back at Cat's Lair, so Lionel has no idea that both Pantro and Chitara have been captured thanks to the mutants, so now it's up to Snarf to go into the ventilation shaft. So after Snarf had pleaded a case to Lionel to ask a question if he's sure that this is the only way and it's a good idea. You don't have to wait for him, Snarf said, and then asked the question, "You're not scared, are you?" "Of course not. I'm terrified," Snarf said. So after Snarf took the vent grill off the ventilation shafts, he says to Lionel, "Here I go." "Good luck," Lionel said. So off Snarf went into the ventilation shaft. So after that, Lionel heads off. But he had no idea that also there were the mutants. So Jackalman of the mutants has to go into the ventilation shaft because according to Slythe, he's the skinniest of them all. So he goes inside to pursue Snarf. Slythe, however, told Monkey that they could handle Lionel on their own. So they head off. So back with Snarf inside the ventilation shaft, he was now on his way to the sword chamber. But he's not alone because Jackalman of the Mutants is also there and he's pursuing Snarf. So Snarf runs off first, but Jackalman was pursuing him and catching up with him. So long story short, back with Jackalman, he's still in pursuit. Back with Snarf, well, good news, he finally makes it to the sword chamber, but the Sword of Omens told him that he's in trouble. So Snarf says, "Relax, it's me, but Jackalman's behind me." Long story short, back with Jackalman still in pursuit of Snarf, as Snarf has tried to get himself out of the ventilation shaft, but he couldn't do it because he's stuck. So finally, he pushed and pushed and pushed, and Snark got out of the ventilation shaft and he made it inside of the sword chamber. Back with Jackalman, when he saw Snarf having a sword of omens in his mouth, he was in shock. He just couldn't believe it that Snarf actually pulled it off. So Jackalman got himself out of the ventilation shaft. So back with Lionel, he continues to look for Chitara and Panthro in the control room, then to the Thunder Tank's garage, but still he has no idea that they have been captured already. That was until when Slythe comes out of nowhere after Lionel wanted to know what happened with them. He just let slip to Lionel to say that they had captured them already, and they were at Castle Plondor. Suddenly, Lionel was soon surrounded by Sly, the leader of the mutants, and Monkey. So Sly told Lionel, "Without your sword, you're finished." "Well, I don't need a sword to finish you," Lionel said to Slythe. So both Slythe and Monkey tried to attack Lionel all at once, but instead he jumps up, and then they collided. Now that Lionel landed on the ground, he threw the weapons aside, but he had no idea that Mumm-ra was also there. Then he picks up Monkey and Slythe. But then by the time that Lionel looked over his shoulder, Mumm-ra was actually there. So long story short, Jackalman runs out first, and then Snarf pursues him with a sword in his mouth. Now don't ask me how they got out of the sword chamber. I guess they must have used the door. I can't say for sure. Watching it happen were Lionel and Mumm-ra. Now Lionel made a compliment with Snarf to say, "Way to go." Back with Snarf, he was running to Lionel with the sword in his mouth. Then Mumm-ra, who got upset with the mutants, he said, "Stop him!" So he uses his power to attack Snarf, but Snarf just dodges them. So long story short, after Snarf had a battle with both Slythe and Monkey, that's when Snarf had thrown the sword to Lionel. Luckily, Lionel catches it, and he does what any good guy would do. He rejected the Thundercats signal from his sword. And when it did, guess what? Remember the metal door that was sealed in the sword chamber? Well, it's not sealed anymore. Well, back at Castle Plondor and in the dungeon, The first to be set free was Chitara, and next is Panthro, and they are now on their way to Cat's Lair. So long story short, back with Lionel and Mumm-ra battling each other while the mutants are busy chasing Snarf until when Chitara and Panthro, when they got back from Castle Plunder, and even better, they got their weapons back. So when the mutants saw what had happened, they ran off. So back with the three Thundercats, they surround Mumm-ra. Mumm-ra knew that he didn't have a chance. So after Mumm-ra was flying up above, that's when he pleaded his case with the Thundercats to say, "You may win this day, but someday my time will arrive." So after that, he flies off. So after that, Panthro went first to speak in his case to compliment the Lionel to say, "You did all right, even without the sword." And of course, there's a saying, and of course, Lionel had learned a lesson from all of this. He said, "The true courage is not from a weapon itself, it comes from inside of you." And of course, the two Thundercats, Panthro and Chitara, and along with Snarf, had agreed with him. So back with the Thundercats outside of Cat's Lair, when Panthro was asking Snarf how did he manage to fit inside of the ventilation shaft, well, to coin a phrase, in Snarf's case, it was a tight squeeze. So Lionel had pleaded a case with Snarf to say he's been pretty hefty lately, and of course Snarf seems to notice that. So after the feliner with Tiger and the kittens arrive, I told you we'd get back to them later, and I guess you could say they're very hungry after their long trip. And so the kittens was asking Snarf to make some meals for him. At first he refused because he says that as of this moment he's going to go on a diet. So then of course Snarf has a second thought. So you know what this means? It is definitely a victory for the Thundercats. So that ends episode 40.